Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Butomi Sophia Mburi Yakachavalala, and welcome to yet another episode of Second Chances with Sophia. So a few weeks back, I introduced a topic on my different social media platforms whereby I was asking people, what do you think is the right age to start having a conversation with your child about sex? There were a lot of different answers, and trust you me, there is no right or wrong answer. But there were two common answers that I received from more than one person, obviously. And those answers were: one, parents or adults were of the view that you must start having a conversation with a child when they start asking you where babies come from. And the second answer was that you start having a conversation with them when they ask you questions. So basically you tell them, you answer their questions and nothing further. So you basically just give them information to accommodate that question. Well, while that is all well and good, by the time that I'm shooting this video, I've obviously done my research and I have my own personal experience that I will share with you shortly. But before you can even continue with this video, this is an educational segment, and I would really love it if you were to engage with me. So what I'm going to ask you is to, in your own mind, in your own head, just think about it. Even before I'm about to tell you what I'm about to tell you right now, what do you think is the right age to start having a conversation with a child? Right. So let's just pick it there for now while you think about it. And I will tell you a personal story and a personal experience that I've recently gone through. So we live in a complex, a very small complex with less than 40 units, and there's a lot of children in the complex, but mainly small kids and preteens. So just the way things are set up, kids are free to walk around the complex and to play anywhere, and it is very safe. So personally, with my child who is 5 years old, I have certain rules, like he's not allowed to go into people's houses. He has to come home at a certain time, and obviously since he can tell time, there are certain things like when the lights go on, he has to come in the house, and other parents don't necessarily have the same rules. And having those rules, it means that my child gets excluded by other kids sometimes, which is fine by me. But when it comes to playing, sometimes kids go into houses and he's left out, so he usually comes back in the house. But very recently, I found that there's a group of smaller children between the ages of 2 and 5 that he's managed to blend in very well with them, and they normally play together. And there's usually a group of preteens, kids between the ages of 9 to 12. They're normally grouped together, always on their phones, and they're looking at those at the younger babies. And obviously my son, as I said, he is 5 years old, and he's normally playing with the younger kids, and there are roughly about 8 of them. So I also have this routine with him whereby every evening, when we're in bed, we have a conversation. I tell him about how my day was, and he tells me about how his day was. So now, a few weeks back, I was not necessarily listening to him. I was busy on my phone, and he was going on and on about how his day went. And out of the blue, he asked me like, "Oh, mommy, guess what kind of games we played?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, what kind of games did you play?" But I was not fully paying attention to him. And he said, "Oh, today we played the kissing game." And almost immediately he grabbed my attention, and I froze. Right at that very moment, I needed to process in my head quickly that I respond in a way that will not make him panic, because I needed to get more details from him. I needed to know what exactly did they do, who was it with, how far did it go, how long has it been going on for. So I calmed down. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a very interesting game. I don't know the game. How does it work?" So he came up to me and he held my head. I was like, "Oh, it goes like this." He literally grabbed my head and he kissed me, and that was a very passionate kiss. And I was like, "Oh, okay, who did you play the game with?" He told me that it was with their friend. It's a boy who's also 5 years old. So it was like, "No, actually they didn't play it with me. He's been playing it with all the other children, and today the lights came on when they invited me to play. So, but don't worry, they'll play with me tomorrow. Tomorrow is my turn. I'm going to get a 10 to do this. And after getting that, all the information that I needed, all the details that I needed, I literally sat him down. I sat down with him, and I was just explaining to him that this is not a good game for him to play, and why it is not a good game. And when we're having that conversation, he was crying, I was crying, we hugged each other. And the main reason why he was crying, he said that it's because he did not know that it's wrong. And the reason why I was crying is that since he was a very small baby, I have been teaching him about safety, I have been teaching him about private parts, but I have never, because he's a boy child, whenever I talk about private parts, I always concentrate on his genitals and his back. Whenever I talk about girls, I talk about genitals, I talk about their bums, and I also talk about breasts. I have never thought of a mouth being a safety area. And for me, it was not just about kissing, but the way they kissed. It was the passion in it. Clearly this child has experience, clearly this child has some sort of experience, some sort of, he has seen something, he had witnessed something. And for me, that was a red flag. But it was not a reflection on my child, it was not a reflection on the other child, on the other children, but more of a concern because that child is 5 years old. That's why I'll end that part. So you can just process that story for now, and yeah, let it work in your head, let it process in your head for a moment. So I'll ask you again, what is the right age to start having sexual conversations with your child? Also, us as adults, it is normally awkward to have a sexual conversation with our children, and we need to identify why it is awkward. I think the biggest reason why it is awkward for us to have this conversation is because of how we view sex. We view sex as something that happens between adults, and that is fair enough. It is something that needs to happen between adults only. However, life happens, situations happen. Today I'm inviting you to start looking at sexual conversations in a whole new different light. We need to change our mindset and say we need to start looking at sexual conversations as a safety talk. The same way you teach your children to wash your hands after each activity due to coronavirus is the same way we need to start having sexual conversations with children. And this is why. If you do not have a sexual or a safety conversation with your child, there are two biggest conversations. One, your child will not be able to know when to say no. Two, if you are not comfortable enough to have a conversation with your child, it does not mean that the world will not force them or will not introduce them to these things. And therefore, it will force your child to go look for answers elsewhere. They will look for answers from their peers, from the internet, from television, or anywhere else outside the world. Do you really want your child to be exposed to such? Do you really want your child to get answers from the world? I know. I am not taking for granted that it is awkward, but I am saying that it is very crucial for the child to be introduced to the topic of sexuality from you as a parent. And how can you do this? There are many different ways to do this. Also, keeping at the back of the mind that when you talk to a child about a certain topic, they get informed. When they are informed, they are confident. When they are confident, they get to identify uncomfortable or dangerous situations, and they can easily get out of them. In cases whereby they cannot get out of dangerous situations, at least they should be able to say no. And if the dangerous situation does continue, they should be able that by at the end of the situation, they should be able to come to you or anyone that they trust and be able to tell that person. Just the other day, I was watching the news. There is a very well-respected and a trusted neighbor in the township of Tembisa right here in Johannesburg. The neighbor, apparently he took 2 4-year-old children and he raped them in a nearby toilet. As soon as he was done with the one child, he let her go out of the toilet, and the child was able to go to their parent and tell them, this is what just happened to me. This is a 4-year-old. Just because you do not talk to your child does not mean that the world would not expose them to such topics. If you talk to your child, they get informed and you get to keep them safe. Sexual conversations are important because you get to keep your child safe. The Asian Institute of Medical Sciences has introduced that the right age to start teaching your child about sex comes in different stages. It comes in different phases. There are different languages that one needs to use when they are communicating with their child, and there are different categories which I'll quickly tell you about them. One, they recommend that between the ages of 2 and 3, you start talking to your child about bodies. You teach them about different body types, and to take away the awkwardness about all of this, the same way you teach your child nose, eye, ears, you also go to the private part area. You say genitals, bums, and then you teach them about their body. While you are doing that, identify that they have special areas, which is the genitals and the bum, that they need to be respected. Those are special areas that are private because they should not be seen in public, and you should not allow anyone to see or touch them. Those are the two secret recipes. No one is allowed to see or touch those private parts. Only your mommy and daddy are allowed to touch them, and only when they bath you or you are hurt. Yes, those are the only 2 reasons why you are allowed to touch your child's private areas. What other good reason is there? None at all. None at all. So between the ages of 2 and 3, you teach them about their body parts, and you help them identify which ones are their private areas. Between the ages of 3 and 6, you teach them the concept of safe touch. By teaching them the concept of safe touch, basically you are teaching them not to allow strangers to do certain things. You restrict them from hugging, you restrict them from kissing, and you teach them about strangers as well. Yes, an auntie and an uncle is allowed to love you without hugging or kissing you in a way that will make you feel uncomfortable. You can also draw up a love list with your child. You can draw up a love list with your child. You identify which are the entities, which are the relatives within your close proximity. Maybe even the helper, maybe their grandparents said it's okay. These are the people that are in our love circle. They are allowed to hug you and kiss you, but these are the limitations as well. These are the safety areas. These are the safe touches that you need to allow. As much as someone might be your friend, does not mean that they are your child's friends as well. They are a stranger and they need to be treated as such. Between the ages of 7 and 12, you teach them the basic concepts of puberty and the reproduction. I believe that's straightforward. And between the ages of 13 and 19, you teach them about safe sex. You teach them about safe sex. You teach them about contraceptives and the importance of consent. So those are the different categories in terms of when you can start having, or how you can start engaging your child or having conversations with your child when it comes to the concept of sex. So when is the right age to start having a conversation with your child? As soon as possible. Your child is older and you haven't started, that is fine. No harm done, we can still take over. Some children will not come to you and talk to you, especially given and ask you questions, especially given the kind of relationship that you have. So it is very important for you as an adult to take the first step and be the one to educate them. So here are like 4 rules that I can also give you as to when it comes to this whole concept of teaching children what you need to keep in mind. Number 1, sexual talk is safety talk. The same way you have any conversation with any other safety conversation with them, even when it comes to like you normally have a conversation, you tell your child, don't touch a stove because it's hot. That is a safety talk. Do it the same way when it comes to sexual talk. Do not make it awkward. It does not necessarily have to be a formal setting, and you need to do it a lot. You need to do it a lot. So you need to constantly reaffirm and constantly have these conversations with your child and work with them according to your pace, according to their pace. Do not lie to them. do not lie to them. Actually, I'll make that the second tip. Do not lie to them. It's very important that when you are busy teaching your child, you also tell them no keeping secrets and do not lie to you. If someone says stays between us, come and tell mommy. Do not debate with that adult. Do not debate with that person. Come and tell mommy. Do not lie. If you lie to them and they catch on that, they will know that I cannot trust my mom when it comes to this topic. So next time, it's either they lie to you, or the next time they'll go to someone that they trust with this topic, which might even not be a good person, but they feel that they'll be able. So you need to establish trust between you and your child by talking to them and being honest. Number 3, keep asking questions and learn to listen. Ask questions about your child's day-to-day activities. That is when you'll be able to pick up should there ever be anything going on with them. Fourth one, when you are teaching your child, try not to use funny words such as referring to their genitals as cookies. You should use a language whereby that even if they do not talk to you, they talk to another adult. That adult will be able to understand them and help them. At one of the mamahood groups on Facebook, I read the other time that there was a 2-year-old. Her and her mom, they used to call her genitals a cookie. So she used to come to school whenever it was time for her to go whenever it was time for her to go home after preschool. She used to cry and she said, "Uncle ate my cookie." So she never wanted to go home. So how the teachers interpreted it was that the uncle eats her cookies, so that made her sad. That's why she did not want to go home. This went on for about 2 weeks, and initially by the 3rd week, she was crying that her cookie is painful. And that's when the teacher started to investigate as like which cookie is painful, and she actually showed them their genitals. She showed them her genitals, which were red, swollen, and she had some infections. That is when by then they took her to the hospital. And they involved the mom. The child was not talking to her mom about the cookie, but she was talking to her school teachers. Had the language been clearer, the teachers would have been able to identify the problem and save the child 2 weeks of trauma. So when you have a conversation with your child, you are keeping them safe. I cannot stretch it enough. This is a safety talk. You are keeping them safe. I am not saying that something bad will happen to your child, but you are empowering them. You are informing them so that should anything happen, and not even necessarily to them, but even if they witness to someone else, they will be informed enough to know that this is wrong and I need to say no. This is wrong. I need to talk to someone else. So those are the 4 main rules or tips that I can give you as these are the main tips that I can give you. There's more, and unfortunately life as a parent does not come, and life in general does not come with a manual. So these are some of the things that occasionally we should have conversations with, we should engage in, so that we help each other just to learn. And I'm hoping that this video would have been informative to you and you'll make some changes. So please, let's engage on the comment section. If you have any tips, what would you advise someone? What would you advise a parent? What is the right age to start engaging your child about sexual talk? What are the best ways to start having these conversations? There's a study that says that 54% of the children between the ages of 5 to 12 have been exposed to sexual abuse. So what would you advise? Engage with me on the comment section below, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you liked it here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I hope you stay. See you next time.